Hey there. So I'm gonna try and get a couple of these videos done on some of these requests. Um, so one of them was for EOS, so EOS, which is now called or just I think it's now called. Um, so looking at the new chart since it became there's a couple of different ways you can sort of look at it. First is from a cycle trend perspective, and you can see it had its first cycle um, through here, basically on the daily. So there's not a lot of information really to use on a weekly or a monthly on this chart. So I've just taken it down to a daily, and I can see they've done their first daily cycle, broke through, tested the break level, and then rejected for that next daily cycle. And then they went through the 5 stages. So there's typically 5 or 6 stages to a cycle, and then they've broken it out, and then they've gone up to test the break level again. So effectively, what they're making is they're making all these origin levels at sort of like 0.66, 0.63, all those sort of levels. And if it overcomes those later, it can have a major breakout. So there are some range trends that have been formed that haven't been retested, and most of those would sort of lead it back up to that sort of 80 cent price point if they did get retested. Okay, and so then it's gone through another cycle sort of between July and August, just in this period here, and then once again they've broken the cycle, and they've gone up and they've retested the break levels and retested the hold levels. So most of this resistance that actually is up here has been tested previously, which means if it escapes this lower area, then it can have a pretty decent pump. And the way they could engineer that is they could push it up and they can close over some of these range trends and then open on the other side, bounce, and then move to the next range trend. So there'd be a few different stages it would potentially move in. Like you got this parallel channel, it could end up getting stuck in that for a little bit, get over the top of it, then move up to the next one. So the only risk here, just looking at this last phase that it's in now, we've got this real doji daily candle here on the 17th of August. So whereas it's been sort of 5 5 5 5 has been how the cycle's been playing out. Indecision candles, they're not really a break or not a break. Sometimes they really can mess with trends. So if we look at, say, like a 6 break, it would mean that this candle here on the 7th of September was the actual end of the cycle, and then that's now meaning the price is moving up. So after the 7th, we got a new support trend formed in here. We haven't tested that, so there is possible reason for another dip down to test that. And we've gone up and we're basically rejecting on the backside of this range trend that runs through here now. So I guess the risk with this is, and there's a few tokens that are like this at the moment, is that all of these cycles are basically money grabs. So the major players, they pump the price up, people chase, all of their liquidity ends up here, and then they push it down to capitulate. They have basically bought all their stop losses and liquidations, and then they push it up and they sell, and everyone chases that pump, and that's the next pool of liquidity, and then they push it down, and they steal it all again, and then so every single one of these is just basically a wealth transfer, which is kind of the purpose of markets. And eventually they stop, right? Because people give up interest on the token because they've already lost enough or whatever. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 daily cycles on the daily time frame. So, and they changed the name of the token or did whatever they did, which would have brought interest back in, and I'm sure there's some other stuff in behind that, as far as narratives or sponsorships or whatever. I haven't really looked into it, but there's probably some other stuff in there that would have attracted people. So whether I would long this from a cycle perspective at the moment, it's kind of getting pretty late. If it was to go back to one of these trends, yes, maybe you would jump in for a long, but you wouldn't try to take it too far. Like you'd just be really careful with where you take your first TP. Um, we haven't seen a retest of this break level up here just yet. Yeah, this 50, yeah, so it's 0.50111. Haven't really seen that yet. But we have seen this hold tested. So yeah, I don't know. I would be on the fence with this one. You really want to try and catch these things when they have their initial pump, they get created, you don't buy, you just wait, and then you just watch it cycle down. And unfortunately, it sounds horrible, but you just watch it cycle down and you watch it, take out all the people that chased the new tech or the exciting event or the new release or whatever it is, airdrops, etc., etc., whatever it is to bring in those people that become the exit liquidity. And then after it's cycled through enough trends, that's when you look for your entry. And in this case, that was the first one, and then here was the second one. And then you take your longs up to the resistance, and off it goes again. But if you keep on trying to repeat the same process, and the people that are actually, the VCs, the whales, the big money that's actually doing this, if they've lost interest, then it becomes a dead token, and then your long's going to go nowhere. Um, so yeah, I'd be a little bit on the fence. Just looking at today's close, it did close back up above the range trend. So it's not a hard close yet. It did close above the break level, but once again, not a hard close yet. If this pulls back up, closes, you could look to take a long on the backside of this trend or on the retest of the break level, and then test these. You can pretty much get rid of that actually, because that's already tested, and then look to take your first profits as just a little bit of a safety thing into this 50 cent area. And then if it breaks through that 50 cent area, look for the range trend up here at about 51, 52. And same thing applies, just because it's of where it is and how many cycles it's had. Just take profits on these, look for the hard close over the top of the trend, look for the retest. If you want to re-enter your profits that you've taken on the retest, do so. Target the hold level. Same thing, TP. If it gets over the hold level, you might have to wait for it to come up to the next break level, which would be up here. And maybe your position isn't going to be as big by then, but just probably be a little bit cautious. And then the range trend up here, if it gets over top of that, hard closes, and then creates a bounce off that, you can probably take the long up to the top of the channel. You've got these various things in between that could reject it, but once it got to there, it's probably going to go up to there. So yeah, you could look to take a trade on that. Maybe just wait a couple of days and just see whether you get a hard close of that old range trend. Because if you do, then basically what it means is that this was a big deviation for capitulation, and that got a whole bunch of people to close their positions and stop out, and then which is actually quite bullish. If they hang around below a range like that and then recover the range, it's usually quite bullish, because whoever was loading up down here, they don't want to take profits just here. They want to take profits up here and so on. So that's one way you could look at it. And the other way, just quickly, is to pretty much just look at it as global trends. So that was our trend break on the last main downtrend. If you'd just taken it, so forgetting cycles, but just taking it as a trend break, it was there, and then the first TP would have been here at that 60 cent mark, and then it's tested the break. Now it's rejected off the break, which has created an origin level, it retested the origin level, and it dumped, and that's what you expect. Okay, so this area that it's in now, it's just broken this interior trend, and it hasn't quite hit the exterior yet. So it hasn't hit the exterior, hasn't hit the break level, but again, it did close over that break level. So although this is kind of pulling back now, you would sort of expect it to come up and test this trend. So that might happen. But we could also just then reject off this trend. So if you get like a really subtle rejection off this trend, I wouldn't be too worried, and you might find you then break it later. When you see this kind of thing, like if you see a sweep of a trend like that, so a trend was created back here from the top. When it sweeps like that, comes back under, it usually means you're going to have a bigger dump because they've taken as much liquidity from the top side of the trend as they can. So if this one turns into just a little tap and retest, and maybe it just bounces or wedges into this area, if it does a sweep up to that break level, I wouldn't consider that as a bearish sweep either, because it might just be trying to invalidate the break level or break the break level. And then probably the bullish thing would be if it closes up on the top side of this trend, but below the break level, comes back down, you could look then to take a trade up to the next level, which is going to be something, probably not here because that's a tested origin, but that is still about that 50 cent mark. It would probably actually go to here at about 52, and then certainly you'd be taking profits into this hold, this daily hold here at 55, because that will have some form of pushback, and you've got to get over that pushback to get to this level, which would be a break, and then you've got another origin level up here, sort of around that 59.60 mark. And you want to be very cautious trying to take anything past that level, just simply because it's an origin rejection level and it hasn't had its first touch rejection yet. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit of info onto what to do with EOS, or A, as it is now called. And yeah, see if I can get a few more of these completed. And yeah, like, subscribe, and all that stuff. Cheers. Bye.